The theory is very fine, but in the end, governments don't operate on the basis of political science theory.
Why don't governments operate on the basis of political science theory?
But most, if what you're interested in is tell me, and this is what policymakers want, tell me what's happening now, what might happen tomorrow. They don't care about theory. They don't care about history. And that's why there's a divide between political science as an academic field and people who deal with political science in the real world. And I can tell you just as a personal anecdote, when I first entered government, I had my master's degree and I thought I was a pretty good student and I knew my stuff. And I arrived in the Ministry of Defense and basically it's like going to boot camp and starting life from scratch because by the way, I tell my students who are interested in academic careers, in governmental careers, and people, let's say, who've got their masters or maybe even PhDs, and I say, you're going to have to unlearn everything that you have spent years and lots of effort and lots of money learning, because the analytical tools that you were taught in a university are very different from what is used in the government.
I don't want to. I mean, I'm a humorous man, but the only thought I could have is, you just like working your tie and saying that you get no respect.
But when you finish that learning process, again, I think it's an incomparable learning process that people, straight academics who've never gone through it, don't have.
So I'm going to jump one more time here because I heard another interesting note there, which is that what content that you create, the articles that you write, the op-eds, etc., that they must be translated as they travel upwards through various echelons in order for them to actually be digested or even reviewed by people in important decision-making positions. Isn't that the same as saying that the transfer of knowledge from the hands of the intelligentsia to the decision makers is an equivalent of broken telephone?
No, I wouldn't call it broken telephone, but there is definitely very often a major difference between what the desk analyst and the senior intelligence officer, senior strategic planning persons, certainly decision maker, are reading. And when it gets up to the decision maker level, they don't want to know every detail. They don't have time. His aides would take the kinds of reports that he was getting from intelligence and from the other government agencies. And it's not that they would just give him, let's say, the executive summary. They would take a highlighter and mark 2 or 3 lines from the executive summary. That's all he'd read because not because he didn't want to, not because he was a superficial person. These people have no time to breathe. Sharon, as a matter of fact, used to get his first briefing in the morning from his military secretary while he was shaving, literally, because shaving time is time. When you're in those levels, it's incredible. And people are shoving papers in your face as you get into the car. And you're going and meeting with party members and citizens and members of Knesset and foreign dignitaries and officials from it. First of all, prime ministers read what they have time to read. They simply don't have the time. And it's something like what I was describing before. Look at the US, which may have the most sophisticated national security decision-making process of any country. And I'm talking in the pre-Trump era. And it has gotten it wrong royally many times. And we had October 6th, 1973, and we had October 7th, 2023, 50 years and 1 day later. Sometimes really smart people screw up really badly. It's not just a matter of getting them and getting decision makers to read material, to understand the material, but they have to be willing to accept it. And by the way, very often they say, hey, who elected you prime minister? Or, there's a reason I got elected here. When you talk about intelligence people in countries like Israel, the US, UK, Canada, strong democracies, there is a clear division between intelligence and policy. The intelligence people don't usually know what their side is doing, and they're not supposed to know, and they're not apprised of what's happening. When you're talking about the issues, it's the Palestinian issue, Iran, issues that we're deeply involved in, Israel is 50% of the picture, right? And the decision maker sometimes says, yeah, these guys, I know a lot more. Sometimes he or she is right. Sometimes the experts are right. But the experts are, remember, they're unelected. It's the decision maker's responsibility to make the decisions and hopefully make good ones.
Why is the world so after Israel? Like, why Why is Israel always such a focus, even though it's such a small spot on the map? And why is it always judged? Why is there such a discrepancy in the expressions of love and admiration for the country and the people?
A small, minuscule piece of the global population. And boy, do we receive a disproportionate share of world attention and world enmity. But Israel, for the last few decades, and if you want, you can say since 67, has been pursuing policies towards the Palestinians and the West Bank that the world doesn't accept. And there's no doubt that the world misunderstands a lot of the issue, doesn't understand the issue, just has very little information, and misunderstands what they do know. There is no issue that has undermined Israel's image more than the settlements issue. But settlements, no one in the world, including our best friends, understands that. And not only do they not understand why we're doing it, but they view it as something which, if Israel is supposed to be a Jewish and democratic country, if that's a raison d'etre, how are you doing something which seems to undermine those two very things? And you have generation after generation that's grown up in the West hearing this narrative about the settlements, viewing Israel as a occupier, an increasingly brutal occupier, but it's been an increasingly not nice, if not brutal occupation. Then you have the Arab, the Palestinian information PR onslaught, call it whatever you want. And Israel's accused of apartheid and genocide and every kind of discrimination and horrible thing you can think about. None of this has any bearing in reality. But we all know that when you repeat lies often enough, look, you see, by the way, in all of the polling in the West, including in the US, as age goes down, support for Israel plummets. People 60 and above still have a warm corner in their hearts for Israel, but have a growing problem with that. And young people do not.
There's something about it that just it's non-negotiable, and I do see it manifest itself in the settlements where you have people that for them the thing that they really hold on to, that they understand about all of the chaos and misinformation, everything that they've been fed in their system, is that the land, they feel a connection to the land, and they're seeking a place that they feel they would want to rest in the land. And it's hard to explain like what it means to feel like you're home, but when it comes at the price of other people's freedoms, I understand that it's a major issue. It's very difficult to explain something which is not on a rational basis, like feeling at home and how important that is at the end of the day. I know everybody wants to feel that way. So I don't know where the solution is there, but I guess the young people are the ones that are going to have to deal with this one.